Hello, I'm Msgr Jim Lisante. This week on Personally Speaking, our guest is the actor Colin Donnell. He's a wonderful actor of the stage and TV and movies. He's also a wonderful singer. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante, and actor Colin Donnell joins me now. Colin is known for his work as Dr. Connor Rhodes in the NBC drama Chicago Med and as Tommy Merlin in CW's Arrow. His other appearances include Scott Lockhart in Showtime's hit series The Affair, Person of Interest, and The Mysteries of Laura. Colin Donnell's work includes in theater Anything Goes, Jersey Boys, and Follies. He's currently starring in a new Broadway show called The Shark is Broken, which is a behind-the-scenes comedy about the making of the iconic blockbuster Jaws. The show imagines what happened between the three stars of Jaws, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, and Roy Scheider, when filming was delayed. Colin is married to actress Patty Murin, and together they are the parents of two young daughters, Cecily and Lorelei. He's here with us today to talk about his life, his career, his family, the new Broadway show, and the values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Colin Donnell. Colin Donnell's our guest. Colin, thanks for coming on. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but first and foremost, The Shark is Broken. We're all fans of Jaws. This is based on Jaws, but I certainly knew lots about Richard Dreyfuss and read a lot about Robert Shaw. But Roy Scheider, the character you played, did you know anything about Roy Scheider before you took the part?
Just being a fan of his work in Jaws, certainly, and all that jazz and French Connection. I mean, he was an actor that I admired for almost kind of his sort of worker bee kind of, he was such a famous actor, but he was just kind of a guy who worked a lot because he loved to work, and I admire that kind of actor.
And so you knew just that part, his professional part. Did you guys ever cross paths with each other?
No. I sort of peripherally, I've heard some stories from some friends of mine who had worked with him or had lived near him in like Sagaponack when he had a house out there. And
Okay.
a director friend of mine actually sent me this great photo of Roy's old house, and he said, I would walk on the beach every day, and I never would not see him standing out on his porch, decked out in black from head to toe, deep tan, cigarette hanging from his mouth. It was perfect.
Isn't that so? So he played the role of Roy Scheider really well. Now, let me ask you this too, because he was admired for his dancing skills as well, and he was always a skinny guy. Am I wrong? But having seen you in other things, have you lost weight for this part?
Well, it was all sort of it wasn't specifically for the parts.
Okay.
It was sort of a journey that I was going on before, just getting into shape. And when you got two kids as opposed to one, it's a little easier to start forgetting to eat every once in a while. But no, it's but I think we're trying our best to not do impressions of these guys, but
Mm.
try to make people forget that they're not seeing, that we're actors up there. We're trying to sort of one of the lovely things has been sort of disappearing in there. And one of the best compliments that I've gotten from some of my friends who have come to see the show is, I knew you were in the show, but I just didn't recognize you when you stepped out on stage, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
great. It's like music to my ears.
Well, let's take a few steps back. Everybody loves when their kid gets involved in the arts, high school, college. But the reality is, most parents want their kids as an avocation to look at the arts. But when someone makes a choice that they're actually going to devote their life to the arts, which you have, did you get a lot of support from the family of origin?
100%.
Wow.
It's a massive credit to my parents that they really they were behind it. They saw
Mm,
the love that I had for what this was, and um, I'm sure they had their worries. I think they would be silly if they hadn't.
Mm,
uh, but there was never they never tried to pressure me to do anything else. There was never anything but, yeah, go for it. Let's try it. And they were like that. I've got two older brothers, and we all sort of went in our own directions professionally in our lives. And it is really a credit to them that with each of us, they met us where we were at and said, yeah, you can do it.
yeah. Isn't that
Let's
great
see
that
it happen.
they gave you the freedom to choose which way to go in your life? That is remarkable. You know, I do baptisms all the time, and I'll say to the parents, the hardest part about being a parent, I would imagine, is when they grow up and then they choose a path in life that you may or may not have chosen for them. And you're saying your mom and dad gave you that freedom. Let's go back to the other part of the arts, though. Anyone reading Colin's biography online will find that he's a very busy working actor, which is great. But there's no actor, Colin, who hasn't found I was perfect for something, didn't get it. Over the years, how well or how poorly do you find it to accept disappointment, not getting the part that you would be right for? Handling disappointment. How do you handle it?
I mean, it's one of those things that you either accept as a reality of the business, or you may drive yourself a little crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
It's it just, for every job that somebody sees me do, there's 10, 15, 20, maybe 100 jobs that I didn't get.
oh,
And so you learn to let it roll off your back, and you don't put too much stock in the fact that it's I think you come to realize over the years that it's not necessarily you not getting a job is not a reflection of your talent.
okay.
It's a reflection of what they needed for that specific job.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it easier. Looking at it from that viewpoint makes you feel better about the no's that you get over the years.
Yeah,
And then you start to see the connections of, like, all right, well, if I had gotten that job,
right.
what in my life wouldn't have happened?
Yeah,
When I did my first television series that I thought was going to be this thing that carried on for years, the show itself did carry on for years. It was a show called Arrow. 8 seasons, 8 beautiful seasons of television. My character was killed at the end of the first season. If
oh,
that hadn't happened, I would not have reconnected with Patty Murin, who became my wife.
yeah,
I wouldn't have two beautiful children
yeah, yeah.
at home. So it's hindsight is a beautiful thing, and it influences uh, your attitude going forward of saying, all right, well, that didn't happen. What's coming up next? Because it's going to be fun.
Colin Donnell's our guest. Colin, when I celebrate weddings, which I do pretty much every weekend, to give a decent homily about the couple, I have them each write me an essay of why, in the billion people out there, how come this is the one? You got Patty now at the center of your life. You love her so much, but this had to have been for you and for her a billion other choices as well. What is it about Patty that made you say, I can build a life with this woman?
She makes me laugh first and
Okay.
foremost. I mean, it's one of the most. She's we knew each other for years before we got together, and nothing had ever happened, but it was the right time at the right place, and we just have so much fun together. And it made me realize that I wanted to keep having that sort of fun. Um, and it really is like the deep belly laughs that keep us, moving forward and having fun. And, in the face of whatever adversity, there's a quick story I'll tell. When we first started dating, we went out to LA for a little bit to be in that scene for work for a second. And it was getting towards the holidays, and we decided to take a cross country road trip back to New York.
Uh,
And we did it with the caveat that if either one of us, it was very early on in our dating. So we said, all right, we're going to start the road trip. If at any point it doesn't seem like it's working, there's a major airport in every city.
right.
I will drop you off at the airport. I was the one who was doing most of the driving. I said, I will drop you off at the airport. You can fly home. We can say, this was lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And those 8 days, I think it was eight or 10 days on the way to New York. And then we did it again on the way back.
Wow.
Those first 10 days were some of the most wonderful times. And it's when I completely fell in love with her, if I
Wow.
wasn't already. But it made me realize that this is just great. I can be sitting in silence with this wonderful woman, and it
Hmm.
feels like the most natural thing in the world.
We're going to call this the Colin Donnell teachable moment, but we have hundreds of kids who come to us for pre-Cana every year in preparation for marriage. I'm going to suggest Colin and Patty say, drive across the country together. That will tell whether,
I think it's either going to make or break you.
yeah, really. I can see that would be a real test. Let's go back for a second to The Shark is Broken. For the people who haven't yet seen it, and I hope all our listeners and viewers will, you're dealing with this tension on the set of Jaws between these actors. Now, because you've been part of a coterie of actors in many things, theater and TV, I got to ask you, have you ever been yourself in a situation where the cast or the crew or the director, it wasn't working? And how do you bring harmony to a set that is not harmonious?
I mean, the answer to your first question is sure. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
there are times in my career when I've been on sets or in rehearsal rooms where things, aren't going that smoothly. It just happens.
Yeah.
I think in the case of any artistic endeavor, inevitably somebody, tensions are going to rise. You're sort of dealing with emotions that are very close to the surface, and you're bringing,
Mm.
your what you think are your best ideas for it, and when they don't coincide with somebody else's best ideas, it can lead to some tension. I mean, the fact is that we all have to recognize that we are part of creating a larger idea, and
Mhm.
I think that's uh, uh, where you sort of get into the idea of creating a harmonious atmosphere is respecting everybody else's opinions and respecting the uh, artistry of all the people that are involved. Um, and so, you listen
Mhm.
and you respond you listen with very open ears and an open heart, and then you respond in kind, and you hope that you are taken with the same respect that you are giving to others. And it's difficult sometimes because sometimes you want your idea to win.
Yeah. Are you by nature, Colin, a peacemaker? Like, would you be the kind of guy that tries to bring people together who are estranged on set?
I think that I have. I don't know that I was always this way, but I found, especially, and I've been doing this for a while now. It's been at it for 20 years or so. And I have found uh, a lot of sort of kinship with who Roy is portrayed to be in this show,
Mhm.
and I think who Roy actually was in real life on sets. I it's I try as best I can to make sure when I'm on a set that everybody feels valued
Mhm.
and important, and that they are contributing enormously to what this production ends up being. Whether
Yes.
you're the third PA or the star of the show, anybody, everybody is essential to the success of any artistic endeavor.
Colin mentioned before, aside from being a wonderful actor, he's also, as he mentioned, married to Patty, and they are the parents of two daughters. The next question is very much related to them. Victoria Clark, the wonderful actress, when she was on our program, surprised me with an answer. She has a son, Tommy, and I said, "Now, Tommy walks out the door every day from your apartment. Do you worry about him?" And she said, every single time he leaves my house, I worry because it's a dangerous world out there. Two daughters, Colin. Do you worry about them?
Always. I
Mm.
mean, they're constantly on my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily they're not walking out the door just yet.
Right, right.
They're only 3 and 4 months old,
Oh, that's
but
great.
of course I worry. It's you know, it's a we live in a best way to put this. We live in a perilous time,
Mm,
and I want I want to be doing my best to raise them to be strong, caring,
mm,
independent, empathetic, loving human beings who care about other people and care about themselves and care about the earth and have an enormous amount of respect
yeah.
for everything around them, but also for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and we're early on in our parenting uh, life, and so who knows if I'm doing an
Yeah.
okay job. I hope so.
Yeah, we'll find out in time. Let's tune in 20 years from now.
Yeah,
There's a great line from the Bible where they're talking to Mary, the mother of Jesus. Blessed are you among women. And I thought of it when I read about your biography. So, wife and two little daughters. You do well being surrounded by women?
I love it.
Yeah.
I do. I really I never thought of myself as being a girl dad.
Hmm.
But I will say when we found out that we were having another little girl, there was a bit of a sense of relief. And it's not, I grew up, in a family with three boys, and I think about my poor mother
Yeah.
dealing with three boys in the family. But there's something our first experience with Cecily and her being such a wonderful kid, and I was thrilled to think about, having another go at
Mm.
raising a beautiful little girl.
Colin Donnell's our guest. The show is The Shark is Broken on the stage in New York. I hope our viewers and listeners will go for it. But let me ask you something, taking a step back. As a guy in ministry like I am, of all the hard questions I have to deal with, probably the hardest beyond death itself is when kids get sick. So, Cecily, when she faces the difficulty with her heart, how in the world do you keep a sense of balance when you know, for both you and Patty as a parent, all you want to do is protect your kid when your kid is in any way threatened by a health issue? Do you remember how you put it in perspective?
Caught me off guard a little bit. I'm a little emotional right now.
Oh,
Uh, it was hard,
yeah.
plain and simple. It was a really difficult time for us. Um, Add to that the fact that we were in the middle of a really difficult time in the world with the pandemic.
Right, right.
Um, and we talk about the humor that Patty and I have. I think we coped a lot with it, with a little bit of trying to make each other laugh and sort of pushing through. But the fact is, when you're sitting in a hospital with your little girl and you're pulling, she was
Mm,
hospitalized before her surgery, and we would basically spend 24 hours at the hospital by her side while we were trying to figure out what was the best course of action going forward until her surgery. Um, but it took a lot of there's a lot of strength to be found in the people who are caring
yeah.
for all those kids at the hospital. It's interesting having been played a fake doctor on TV for so long.
Yeah.
uh, I developed an enormous amount of respect already for all the medical professionals out there and all the people who are working in the hospitals, be it medical or not.
Yeah.
Um, just to have that sort of selfless attitude of caring for others
Hmm.
on their worst day,
Yeah.
and it extends beyond the patients. Truly, um, excuse me. Uh,
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I think they are lifesavers, both in terms of our spirit life as well as our physical life as well. Um, yeah. Let me ask you this. I don't know where you and Patty are in the whole journey of faith or God and stuff, but the people in my parish, when the kid gets sick, and I tell them go with it. It's a perfectly legitimate feeling, but like shaking their fist in God's face, like, all right, if you want to take it out on somebody, take it out on me, but don't let bad things happen to my kid. Did you guys have any kind of anger about? Come on, this is my baby.
In a bit. I think it was for us, we definitely went into a mode of it was looking towards the next thing.
Mm,
It was uh making sure that we were doing everything we could to make sure that she would be good going forward. And I'm not a particularly faithful person in terms of broad faith, but it's it. There was a it's easy to have perspective in the grand scheme of things because we were ultimately, I know this seems silly to say, but we were ultimately very lucky with her condition that it was caught early,
ah,
that it was a very operable situation, that we had access
yeah,
to one of the best surgeons in the world.
yeah,
Uh, we had we were covered by our union's insurance to not
mm-hmm.
even think twice about the fact that the medical businesses, the business of medical wouldn't get in the way of the practice of medicine.
Yeah,
um and so there was a lot of uh I think a bit wondering. You always sort of wonder how or why, and maybe take a little bit of blame on yourself, and but then you find moments, or at least I did. I can't,
yeah,
I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I found moments to take stock of what, uh, what was going right.
yeah,
And, um, at the end of the day, as horrific as it is to, as difficult as it is to see your little 10-week-old baby going through something
yeah,
like that, knowing that the the percentage of her being totally fine at the end of the day
yeah,
was really helpful. And I know that
yeah,
it's not always the case with a lot of kids who get sick. And so I counted myself very lucky for that.
yeah, yeah. Colin Donnell's our guest, great actor in a play called The Shark is Broken in New York. Colin, let me ask you, because I just think they're great names. Cicely and Lorelei. How'd you come up with those?
Or the Cecily's name actually comes from a
Cecily.
show that Patty did off Broadway at Playwrights Horizon. Uh, a song in the show called Cecily Smith, and
Hmm.
this was long before we ever thought about having kids. And we just both loved the title of this. We loved the song and we loved the title. And I think I remember us saying one day, man, that would be a great name for a kid, wouldn't it? Just sort of in passing. And we hadn't even thought about it. And cut to years later, find out we're having a little girl. And both of us went, it might be Cecily, right?
I promise last question before we wrap, but Colin Donnell's our guest. Colin, you talked about the craziness of our world, and I we just had Susan Lucci on, and one of her final things, which was a little discouraging for me, was it's a crazy world, and I wonder if it'll ever come back together, whether it's internationally, nationally, people of backgrounds and diversities. I always think of Rodney King. Can't we all get along? Are you a guy who, looking at the world, your own personal world and the larger world, are you a person of hope?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. Well, it's complicated.
Okay.
I certainly, I certainly am hopeful, and I think that there are real markers out there in the upcoming generations of that are reasons for that hope. I think there is a very strong generation of people that are being raised that want to fix what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And, back to one of your earlier questions about, worrying about my daughters. I do, but I'm hopeful that they are part of that solution.
Yeah.
I hope that they are, they are the helpers that we're going to be looking towards. They're to bring in Mr. Rogers, because who doesn't like Mr. Rogers?
You're right. Yeah.
But so I think that there is a lot in the world that gives me pause, and that makes me worry about what's to come and how bad it might get. But I think if I don't have a little bit of hope that it will get better,
Mm-hmm.
it would make it very hard to get up for the day. And I like getting up for the day.
and you need to with those girls at home. I want
That's
to thank
right.
I want to thank
Bright and
Colin
early,
because they're going to get you up every time. Really, it's interesting. You mentioned Mr. Rogers. I had an opportunity to spend time with him, talk to him, get to know him, and I went into meeting him knowing that my nieces and nephews had grown up on him, saying he's probably going to disappoint me and turn out to be not what he seems to be. And I fell in love with the guy because he is exactly what he comes across as. He's the real deal. I mentioned that, Colin, because I'm like many people, an admirer of your work, Patty's work, but I wanted the more personal side today. And you're no disappointment. You're a wonderful human being, and I hope the Shark is Broken is a great success. But just thank you, not just for sharing about The Shark is Broken, but about some of the values that you treasure the most. And one of the reasons I'm not worried about your daughters is that if they're being raised by you and Patty, they've already got a big leg up in terms of the kind of home, the kind of values that they're surrounded by. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
As we end today's program, if you'd like to reach out to me for any reason, you can get me at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. Aside from listening to us on SiriusXM, the Catholic channel, you can also watch us on YouTube by going to Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante. Please hit like and subscribe. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer, Personally Speaking. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.